sustainability is not a high-priced lifestyle. It's not just, driving a Tesla and having a solar roof. It's making kind of everyday consumption decisions to be more prudent, frugal, and thoughtful with your resources. And millions of Americans are doing this every day. For us, this kind of moment of high inflation, high interest rates, where folks have to be, more considerate about their spending, actually creates an opportunity to say, hey, here's a few different things how you can actually save some real money, get some extra cash back, and also have a positive impact on the planet.
Hi, I'm Connor Gaughan, and welcome to Consensus in Conversation, a podcast where I speak with optimistic innovators who are working to create a strong, sustainable economy. Today, I'm joined by Jean-Louis Warnholz, co-founder and CEO at Future. If there's one motivating force strong enough to provoke behavior change, it's money. Just ask the travel companies with their rewards cards and the popular websites whose hacks help us build up a bank of points or miles. Could this also work for positive social change? Could this be part of the solution towards decarbonization? From charging EVs to buying sustainable brands to taking public transit, there are countless decisions that we can take to cut carbon pollution in our daily lives. And in aggregate, these changes can make a big difference. Jean-Louis recognized the great potential of aligning our buying behaviors with rewards, and so he created the Future credit card. Future incentivizes users to make environmentally conscious purchases through the power of giving consumers cash back. These monetary rewards increase the value of actions that already save us money, helping consumers realize that sustainability and personal savings are directly connected. So thanks so much for doing this. We're really excited to have this conversation. I think when I first read about what Future was doing, it was such a cool, innovative idea. And so we are thrilled to get the story and to hear from you and hear your story a little bit. Why don't we start with that? Give us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, Connor, thank you so much for having me on the show, and I appreciate the kind introduction. I think for most of my life, my kind of big passion was really moving, more business, more investment, more opportunity into emerging markets around the world, where I've had opportunity to spend a bunch of time.
You mentioned spent a lot of time in emerging markets, spent a lot of time in the finance world. I think worked overseas for a very long time. I'm curious how that affected your insights and your kind of perspective on what you do now and how you have built Future.
I get up every morning with almost an obsession to kind of move Future forward and make sure that we have measurable, meaningful impact in terms of how we show up in the fight against climate change. And I think that deep passion, was formed by seeing what happens to communities in eastern parts of Kenya, for example, when a flood happens or a drought happens. Right, there are no safety nets. There are the kind of heat waves that we've seen here in parts of the US or even in Canada are really kind of commonplace. Right, there's no AC. There's no kind of opportunity to find shelter, and so I think that kind of really informs my kind of day-to-day thinking, and that sense of urgency, I think, is really radiating through everyone on the Future team. And I think that's been a reason why we've been moving at, what is a pretty unsustainable pace for a sustainability company, I would say.
We talk a lot here about personal, but also corporate pivots, the P word. And I'm curious if there was a point in your early career when you decided to make a big change and head this direction. What was it about the misalignment of economic incentives and the changing climate that was like an aha moment and a pivot?
Yeah, so I think so for me, I kind of seen firsthand what the impact and really the early impact of climate change is on communities I care deeply about and spend a lot of time with. And so I think that was the kind of initial catalyst. And then I think Future really came about as I was looking at what can I do as an individual concretely to move from a very high carbon footprint, which was really atrociously high, to a significantly lower carbon footprint. And I thought that, there are no real incentives for me as a consumer because carbon is experienced as something that's super cheap, right? I tried out some apps and they would basically sell me a subscription to become carbon neutral for the price of a Netflix subscription. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to change anything. And I just couldn't buy into that. I then looked at how many trees I would have to plant. And I figured out that, as a family, we would have to plant over 7,000 trees and really look after them. And it's like our own family forest. And we're just, an average American family. And so as I was thinking through this, that, didn't seem like the kind of best path to go down. And so we just decided, let's just cut carbon aggressively, right? Let's move to electric driving. Let's get solar. We switched all of our fashion consumption to secondhand clothing, which, for any family out there, best choice ever. I mean, my kids couldn't care less, saving a ton of money, getting extra cash back with the Future card. It's like a no-brainer choice. Like I should have done this years ago. And that has real impact. And so we started kind of really quantifying that impact. And we realized that we are saving tons and tons of carbon and having a far greater impact than we could have had if we were, going to kind of plant our own family forest with thousands of trees. And so I think the key observation was that the price of carbon is kind of missing in the economy, right? It doesn't show up when I ask to get my stuff delivered in 2 hours. It doesn't show up when I fly or when I, buy disposable fashion. And that's what Future's in the business of changing. Like I want the price of carbon to be pervasive, valuable, and really visible at the point of sale for consumers in our daily lives. And I'm convinced that I think this is kind of how we can change the dynamic, because once something has a price, right, we are much more thoughtful about, how we engage with it.
There's a value associated with it, a value and a cost.
Exactly.
Yeah. So give us the real quick elevator pitch, how you would describe Future.
Basically, kind of Future monetizes your carbon savings to grow the sustainable economy. So we pay you to cut carbon. We do that with our financial tools. So we were the first that launched a debit card that gives you 5% cash back on purchases that are better for the planet, whether that's taking the train or buying secondhand or charging your car. We have about 50,000 businesses where you get extra cash back for all the stuff that is better for the planet. And now with Future Coins, which we just released, we're taking this one step further and we're actually paying you for every ton of carbon that you reduce by making kind of smart choices in your day-to-day life. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Between your experience and your revelations and where the business is today, what was the actual origin story? How did it, give us the kind of the early days. Where were you and how did you and the founding team get things built?
So I've been kind of pondering this for a while. We really started out cutting carbon in our own lives. And we found a community of, folks that wanted to do the same and found this really difficult. And I didn't understand why it had to be so difficult. And I remember we took a drive with a family during COVID to go camping in Arcadia, the national park up in Maine. I've kids and they asked me, look, what are we doing to fight climate change? And the answer at the time was absolutely nothing. Right? I think we've been thinking about it, but nothing decisive was happening. And so it was on this trip I decided, look, that's it. I'm just going to dedicate the next part of my career to doing whatever I can to fight climate change so that when my kids ask me that question a couple of years from now, I can say, well, we did this, this, and this. And, we think that we made a contribution in this kind of bigger fight. So that was the kind of aha moment. And I am extremely fortunate to kind of call my co-founder and CTO, Kamal, a close friend. And he was the smartest people I knew when it comes to kind of data and kind of building systems and really solving the data problem at the heart of this. And so I called him, he loved it, he was in, and there was Future.
And like many good startups, began with a product that you built, or a need you had for yourself.
Yeah, and actually, fun story, I never really share this, but in the beginning, we said, look, let's just put everything out there. So we actually had a website, my wife and I, where everything we bought, right, from my underwear to the milk to our toothpaste, we would go up and we would ask the kind of, friends in the climate community, let's kind of figure out what is our real carbon footprint? Not something I put in a calculator, but if you actually look at everything that we bought, how does that measure up? And that was a really interesting exercise because we realized that some of the things that are really high in our kind of day-to-day conversations, like flying, for example, actually has a far lower impact in our lives than the kind of fashion that we buy and how we think about day-to-day consumption choices. And we saw from the data that that's actually true for a lot of American families. And so sometimes the way to really move the needle isn't necessarily the hard stuff. If you have to kind of fly to see friends and family, you're not going to give this up. But if the decision is, am I going to shop at Lululemon or Lululemon Like New? Yeah, I'm going to go with Lululemon Like New, because why not? And I think that was kind of really important for us to refine the data and also kind of understand how Future can position ourselves to make a real difference that is measurable. Because I have zero interest to just build a feel-good company that doesn't move the needle. I think the reason we're at this is because we want to have kind of real impact that you can measure in tons and tons of carbon reduction that is kind of happening across folks who are joining us. And we want to see, millions of people make climate smart choices because it's a good economic choice that is better for them and their families.
To do that requires at least two things, probably many, many more. But the first probably is to educate consumers. And the second is probably to brand this or to challenge the historic notion of cutting carbon, living sustainably as something that costs you something, a brand negative, and instead find a way to make this a value add to someone's life. So kind of a branding problem. In either direction, with either one, curious kind of for your take on those two components that are kind of requisite if you're going to get a bunch of people to sign up and then drive millions and millions and millions of tons of carbon out of the marketplace.
Yeah, and for us, I think the reason to first show up in the market with a debit card that gives you 5% cashback if you take the train. Like, it's as simple as that, right? There's no fee. It's super simple to sign up. Nobody else gives you cashback to take the train. Nobody else gives you cashback right now to shop secondhand. I think that was a no-brainer. And I think what we've realized is that the kind of education, the information challenge is far greater than we thought. And so we spoke to folks who love secondhand shopping and love thrifting, but they didn't know that some of the biggest brands that they shop at all the time actually have these amazing new kind of re-commerce resale marketplaces where they can kind of go straight to the website and get top-notch quality at a significant discount. I think they're like sometimes, when disruption happens so quickly in the market, it takes a while to catch up, right? We have this partner, Plant Burger. They make fantastic kind of plant-based burgers. And when I had first, a couple of years ago, tried plant-based meat, I was not a fan at all. And that kind of, had kind of stuck with me until I tried their new burgers. And I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And so sometimes we have kind of sticky assumptions. And in a place that is as disrupted and as fast moving as the sustainable economy, there is constantly an information problem. Right? Folks still think that you can't charge your car anywhere and you're going to break down on the way from here to New York. There is not the kind of pervasive understanding that, you have literally thousands of charging stations, many at which, it takes you 20 minutes to fully charge your car. So there's an information problem that we're solving. So I think that's the kind of first piece. And I think as a brand, yeah, we want to be exciting and fun. And I think the way we show up in the marketplace is very optimistic and kind of colorful and very differentiated because we want to celebrate climate smart living. Like, we don't want it to suck. We want it to be exciting.
And put those two things together and you've got a real opportunity. I know so many folks assume that when you're buying something that is, climate friendly, you're giving up on quality or you're giving, or you're paying more for it, the green premium, so to speak. That seems like both a branding opportunity and an education necessity, like combined into one.
I love that you asked that question. Like, there's a journalist I was chatting with some time ago, and I think she expressed some concern given budgets are getting tighter and, inflation, interest rates are rising, that would really create challenges for the kind of sustainable marketplace. And I didn't understand why she was, I just didn't understand the question. And I think the genesis of the question was because she was thinking about sustainability in terms of brands that are high priced, that use recycled materials, that often kind of sell sustainability as part of their ethos and tend to have much higher price points, right? We're thinking about goodwill, right? You get 5% cash back if you shop at goodwill. You have folks that are taking the train or that are, biking places. And sustainability is not kind of a high-priced lifestyle. It's not just, driving a Tesla and having a solar roof. It's making kind of everyday consumption decisions to be more prudent, frugal, and thoughtful with your resources. And millions of Americans are doing this every day. And so for us, this kind of moment of high inflation, high interest rates, where folks have to be more considerate about their spending, actually creates an opportunity to say, hey, here's a few different things how you can actually save some real money, get some extra cash back, and also have a positive impact on the planet.
So the other side of the market-based equation for the consumer, which you just mentioned, are the companies, the brands. You've got 50-some thousand. What's the sales pitch to brands to be a part of this network?
Yeah, it's actually very simple, because if you're a brand that is in the business of producing climate-friendly, low-carbon products and services, we are building a membership base that is passionate about lowering their carbon footprint and buying these things. And so I think there's a very direct alignment, because we're not asking you to offset your carbon footprint or plant trees or the like. We're basically creating incentives to shop at places that are bringing innovations into the marketplace that make it easier to live a climate-friendly lifestyle. So I think there's a very kind of nice alignment. And the way we're kind of thinking about future now as we grow is basically the most rewarding way to pay in the sustainable economy. It's an ecosystem of brands that are innovating, that are coming out with amazing new products that allow us to, enjoy life and do so in a way that is more in tune with the climate and with the planet.
And we're certainly seeing with many companies an excitement or an interest in growing their market by looking at new options, including the circular economy. And I know there's a couple that you guys have partnered with that are the big names, maybe more the prestige brands, like Lululemon, which has a resale program. Give us your take on the circular economy as kind of a high level.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of the kind of biggest levers in my mind, and I think one that we don't talk enough about. Like, it's not kind of, one of the top 3 or 4 things that kind of people mention when they think about climate action. Again, flying and driving your car and those things come up more frequently. I think the trend lines that we've seen around fast fashion, for example, or the fact that we need a new phone every year, instant delivery, or ordering something at midnight and getting it by 4 a.m. in the morning. This is new, right? This is like, if you look at the average age of a phone 10 years ago, is very different than it is today. And so we've made certain choices about how we kind of consume and how the economy works day to day. And I think with circularity, I think we can figure out how to be more efficient with resources. And for me, it's just the next stage in evolution in terms of how the economy evolves, because it's maximizing the resources that we have and making the most out of it.
And so you've got all the stakeholders are now in the room and in the game, and you've given us a great case for all of them to engage and told us why they're there and how they're a part of the solution. How do you view your total addressable market? Like, how big can this get? And then how do you get there? How do you scale this to be so pervasive that everyone's thinking about it? It's in all of our wallets.
I think the really nice kind of, I think, lesson and experience for myself, but really everyone at Future, is that we've very quickly been able to have members in every state across the US. And some folks are with Future because it's just a really rewarding debit card and gives you 1% cash back on everything, which is a great deal. So the way we are thinking about Future is and the way we're thinking about the types of purchases that you get cash back on is with a view to develop a mainstream financial product that rewards people in their everyday lives. And so that's why you get 5% cash back at Goodwill and Patagonia, at Tesla superchargers and, the Greyhound bus, because we realize that folks have different opportunities in their lives in terms of their budget, their spending. They have different kind of baskets that they're spending money on day to day, right? For someone, it's charging the car regularly. For someone, it's taking the metro every day. And so we very deliberately thought about cashback in a way that is kind of the most accessible basket where everyone kind of has an opportunity to benefit. And now in terms of how we're looking to roll out is really showing up at the point of sale.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen brands on the finance side that I think have been very successful, been able to kind of grow very quickly. And I think Future has a real case to kind of show up at the checkout, because we are rewarding you for doing things that are better for the planet, and kind of really taking the kind of carbon price and making it visible and present when you think about your day-to-day purchasing decisions. That's kind of how we think about scale in the next kind of few months and years.
And as you are scaling, and as you think back to the first chapter and the first onboarded partners, I'm curious, you've covered a lot of different companies, a lot of different industries, a lot of different sectors have signed on. And I'm curious what you've gleaned about how different sectors are thinking about or approaching or trying to tackle things, because not many people have the opportunity to cross-sector like this and to work with retail, fashion, as well as travel, as well as a host of others. So what have you learned about the various industries?
First of all, I am extremely spoiled in a way that I think at Future we've been extremely fortunate to be able to work with really exciting brand partners right from the beginning. And so, Rad Power Bikes was one of the first ones. And I love how they made e-bikes more kind of widely usable, right? They think about the utility aspects. They think about, well, how do you use this if you're, dropping your kid off at daycare or you're going on a grocery run? Like, what are the kind of elements that have to be present in the bike if this is kind of an everyday transportation mode and not just something, you're kind of racing on the weekend? I loved seeing that. I loved how they were able to innovate and evolve that mission. Just Salad is another one which has this kind of really exciting way to think about the bowl and all the kind of cutlery and everything that you're using when you consume food over lunch, and you're going out with your colleagues and you're grabbing a salad. And they've really innovated how that works, how you can create circularity by launching a bring back bowl that you can actually reuse in a smart way to dramatically cut carbon in all of their restaurants. Back Market has made buying refurbished devices seamless and makes it cool and exciting and rewarding. And so we've been fortunate to kind of see a lot of that in our day-to-day interactions. And I think what we're now seeing is this play out with bigger brands as well that are looking to really innovate across their supply chains. I mean, we launched this collaboration with Volkswagen, and they have a great deal on their car, but they also give you 3 years of free charging, right? So at every Walmart in our neighborhood and every mall, I can now charge my car for free, which makes it just really a lot more accessible for folks across the country. And I think the pace of change, the pace of disruption and innovation in this space is really accelerating, which has been fun to see.
We talked a little bit about it, and you even think about the Volkswagen example. Historically, the sustainable economy has not enjoyed a great brand reputation, not hit it out of the ballpark yet. And you're starting to see some companies who are phenomenal marketers who are beginning to, it seems, apply that marketing prowess to their product or service or lane in the sustainable economy. And Volkswagen's, I think, a perfect example, right? But I'm curious how you see or what you think we need to do to help shift the perspective or rebrand the sustainable economy so that it's appealing and exciting to consumers and something that's top of mind and not something that's seen as cost prohibitive or subpar in terms of quality. Like, how do we?
Yeah. I think for us, I think what we're learning is it's important to really look at climate and climate action as a smart economic choice that is beyond politics. It's beyond certain ideologies and, left and right and blue or red. It's just, it just makes sense. Whether you are in Texas or you're in California or up in Idaho, it makes sense to pay less on your utilities, right? It just does. It makes sense to pay less at the pump. And I think it's that simplicity to kind of come back to, the very immediate direct benefits that folks can enjoy from that lifestyle. I think that will help move the needle. I think the other piece is just, you go into some of these EVs and they're just awesome pieces of equipment, right? They are just better and more fun to drive and faster and sportier. And so, let's kind of talk about the benefits, because once millions and millions of people embrace these benefits, I think the impact will be there. And I think we've just, as a movement, it's been challenging, right? It was not the most exciting way to kind of show up. Like, consumers don't like to be told what they can't do. And I think that's often how the climate movement has been experienced. And I think that has to change. And we are now in a position where we have the tools and the new technologies to really celebrate all the awesome stuff that we can do that, hits a double bottom line in the end of the day.
So that's kind of where I want to go next. Thinking about kind of future as a company, no company sustains unless they can sustain profitability over the long haul. And yet you obviously have a very, important alignment with purpose in making the world a better place. So doing good and doing well, which is what we talk a lot about on this podcast. And so I'd love to get your take on just how you think businesses should think about the opportunity to make decisions that are both good for the company's bottom line, but good for the world.
From a business perspective, I think we're now in a generation where I think authenticity is key, and inauthenticity can get punished very quickly and sometimes very, very severely. We're looking to hold ourselves accountable for it at Future every day, is that we think about every brand that we move onto the ecosystem to kind of really see, look, are they really making a meaningful contribution to decarbonizing our lives? Or is there some greenwashing going on? And so I think we have a team that looks at this very, very carefully. And I think we will see more and more companies, I think, embrace that level of authenticity, where they realize, look, let's just accept the high carbon price and let's just figure out how we can innovate ourselves out of that and how we can adapt to a rapidly disrupting world where carbon and climate are becoming more and more important to how we look at risk, how we look at purchasing, how we look at our stock market value at the end of the day. I think that's where we're headed. I think some companies are embracing this faster than others. But for me, that's the kind of trajectory that we're moving towards.
Yeah. You talked about how this all started in your own personal path, and I know it's not always easy for folks to conceptualize like how to cut their carbon footprint. I know I've seen on some social media, like you've done some DIY Halloween stuff, and
yeah, that was fun. My son was excited because he suddenly got all these all these likes, and he was like, "Oh, whoa, this is fun."
But how would you kind of give folks a couple pointers to just get started? And also part of that, actually, you just said, your son got so excited with seeing the positive affirmations. Not just how can folks get started, but how can folks actually also cross-generationally work with the next generation to keep this going, and or to take from them the lessons that the next generation is already learning and shouting in our ears to try to get us to do?
I love the question. Thank you. And I think if you kind of look at all of our socials, which is at the Future Card, we do provide kind of everyday examples, from biking to electric driving to solar to secondhand shopping to washing your laundry on a different cycle and getting the same result. that are constantly kind of helping you save cash and carbon. And I think, honestly, part of what's been super fun for us is just to experiment with different things, right? So, I'll give you one random example. As we thought about impact, we have school-age kids, and we all consume a lot of milk, like gallons and gallons every week for, breakfast and everything else. And so we got 7 different kinds of non-dairy milk, and the kids hated most of them and they liked one of them. And so we started buying that particular brand, and that's kind of what we shifted to, made a significant difference. I think what's important is the opportunity to have conversations with your kids. You talked about the other generation that you want to have anyway. Like, my kids constantly want the latest devices. I'm talking about reborn tech and refurbished tech. And now if they make their birthday list, they no longer go on Amazon or Apple, they go on Back Market. And sorry, that was a very shameless plug for one of our partners, but it's true. And then we have conversations around, like, why are we doing this? Like, what's the impact? Like, we talk about e-waste, we talk about carbon, we talk about, water pollution and the like. And so it's been a really great tool to talk to my kids in a way that is kind of very direct. They're also always watching how many points I have accumulated on my Future card, because they all have their kind of stuff from Future's rewards shop, where we kind of feature climate-friendly rewards, which, they've kind of have picked out for themselves. I mean, we've seen amazing stories across our members where they've kind of taken meaningful action. And the thing I love most of all is when I get the response and they, oh yeah, that wasn't hard at all. Or, that actually saved me some cash, or I hadn't thought about this before. I think that's where we feel that we're adding value, because we kind of start conversations that are a little bit different and ultimately lead to positive outcomes.
I want to kind of end with a question that I ask everybody. Every day there's depressing headlines that we read. And in particular, when it comes to the environment and the changing climate, and there are a lot of them, and they sometimes seem insurmountable. And sometimes our government entities do that on purpose, I think. The IPCC is, it's a tough document to read. It does not leave you with a lot of hope. And so I think for many, it's demotivating. It seems too big to take on. And my individual impacts, as a consumer, or even as a business owner, they're not going to, I can't fix this. This is too tough, too big, too systemic, right? You said earlier, for this to actually succeed, it means consumers and governments and the NGOs and companies, big and small, are all going to need to be a part of the solution, right? And so how do we inspire folks to move beyond that defeatism?
So I think for me, the focus is always around championing and celebrating what you're able to do with your own decisions in your own life, and the kind of power that has. As I think about the system, right? We are the system. I mean, the system is just you, me, and everybody else and everyone around us. And I think what we don't talk enough about, we are collectively making dramatic choices all the time. We used to go to an office and then we don't. We used to buy clothes that, we would wear a lot, and then we buy clothes that, we wear one time and then we throw it away. So they're kind of systemic choices that we make every day. And we do have the opportunity to dramatically move the needle if we act together in concert in a very kind of deep and meaningful way. And so every time, my kids ask me this questions like, well, what can we do? I constantly kind of take them on a little history journey to show how profound the change has been in just a short period of time. Right? My kids are Black, right? Growing up in America, and obviously we're still dealing with enormous challenges on a daily basis. But if you look at what has been accomplished and what has been changed in historically a relatively short amount of time, I think, the sky's the limit in terms of what we can do to kind of innovate ourselves out of it and kind of really, really move into a completely different direction. But it has to be real. Like, we have to do things that are non-marginal, that really move the needle in a big way.
What a great way to wrap up the conversation. Huge thank you to Jean-Louis for joining me today. Consensus in Conversation is hosted by me, Connor Gaughan. The episode is produced by Will Gatchell, Chandler Bramstead, and Jeff Rock. Executive produced by me with editing from Reasonable Volume. Special thanks to Consensus Creative Director Kate Tucker and strategist Patrick Gallagher. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. See you next week.